Hello, welcome to the Sportscast and specifically the Tyler Turner Show. Check us out today on Periscope, on iTunes, and on Twitter at the Sportscast1. Please leave a review and like and share. Forgot the rest of my script. Sorry. So, I have a script to read at the beginning of my show, and I think this is the second time in 3 weeks that I completely forgot to pull it up. So anyways, you just on Twitter, on Periscope, on YouTube, hit up the Sportscast1 on Twitter, and the same name on Instagram. Like, share, review. And this is the Tyler Turner Show. Today's date is November 9th. So Monday, November 9th. So to talk a little bit today about this last weekend, Big Ten, Pac-12, obviously Big Ten, Pac-12 action. First, let's talk about the Big Ten. Big Ten, week 3 in the Big Ten. And I am just going to pull this up quickly. This last week, I did not see as many games as I would have normally liked it when I was working. So most of the stuff I'm going off, specifically the Big Ten, I did see more of the Pac-12, specifically the Oregon game, because obviously that's my team, so I watched them. But the games in the Big Ten, mostly I looked at the stats, looked at deficiencies, saw some highlights of a few games, and just kind of read the summary of the game. So I'll just kind of go over it, see exactly how the games went this weekend in the Big Ten. I'm just going to touch on the Big Ten probably kind of briefly, and then I'm probably going to pull up and look forward to this week's game, what games I think are going to be good. Remember, it's the 4th week of the Big Ten. They're pretty much halfway there. They have 8 games plus the 1 championship game weekend. So I'm looking forward to covering the Big Ten. First game was Nebraska versus Northwestern. Nebraska, I didn't see the game, but it was a game that Nebraska had to win, obviously, against the Big Ten West rival, a game that it just seems like Nebraska just in the Scott Frost era, this is his 3rd year, and it seems like he cannot get over the hump. It just seems like he's kind of like I don't even know how to explain it. An offensive coach, but they only scored 13 points in the game. Northwestern does have a good defense. They're number 5 currently in efficiency when it comes to defense. So I think that I don't know what to think of Nebraska currently. I just don't know what to think of the situation with Scott Frost. I had a lot of hope, obviously, going into the season with Scott Frost. I was hoping they were able to kind of be able to take that next step. Adrian Martinez, I don't think has been able to quite be the quarterback that he was coming out of high school. This was a consensus 4-star. This is a guy that I think had really was really valued. He had a good freshman year. He definitely had a good end to his freshman year. Remember, they started 0-6 a couple of years ago, but they were able to finish 4-8, played Ohio State tough, and I think there was a lot of hope for the Ohio State team. For the Nebraska team. So I'm discombobulated a little bit right now. But anyways, because I was upstairs doing the podcast, my wife woke up and she was sleeping there. Now I'm trying to get my bearings, get my source. Anyways, back to the topic at hand, to get back on focus and just rejuvenating the subject. But Nebraska just does not seem to be able to, a couple of years ago, they were 0-6, lost a lot of close games, finished 4-8, but you're like, man, there's talent, they're recruiting well. Then last year didn't have a good start, finished better. 5-7 was the second-year hiccup. Now in year 3, once again, a game like Northwestern, you have to start winning over a team that you have more talent than. And Pat Fitzgerald's a very good coach, and he's built a solid program. at Northwestern. And like I said, they have a very good defense and a better offense this year. But Nebraska should be beating them. And they don't. And they just don't. And so I think maybe moving on, Luke McCaffrey is one option. I just don't think Adrian Martinez, I think he turns the ball over too much, and I don't think he's consistent enough. I'm 2.5 years, you got your sample size, and I know he was a big-time recruit, but I just don't know if he's that guy. So I'll probably play McCaffrey. But let's see what Nebraska's able to do. Michigan State versus Iowa. Michigan State beat Michigan. Huge victory. Obviously, lost week 1, come back week 2. Just get blown out. Looked at the box score, gave up a touchdown and an interception, gave up a punt return for a touchdown, 3 picks by the quarterback. You're not going to win. You're not going to win that kind of game. And it looked like Iowa, who lost the first 2 games, but didn't play that bad. Iowa's still a pretty good team. Both those first 2 losses, while they lost, they played pretty. They didn't play bad. I mean, those are close losses, and obviously they destroyed Michigan State. So I think Iowa still. They're a team that can, they could end up winning 5 games. We'll see how their schedule works down the stretch. I think the big game was Michigan versus Indiana. I think a lot of people thought, you know what, Michigan had a bad week last week. They lost to Michigan State. They're going to come back this week and they're going to beat Indiana. They didn't. They did. They played simple. Didn't. They got easily defeated. Michigan doesn't have a good defense. They're one of the lowest defenses as far as efficiency in the Big Ten. They have real problems in the secondary. They had trouble running the ball the other day. They just struggled, and I say they have a very good running back core and a good running quarterback, but just not. Michigan's just not very good. They're 1-2. I knew that talent had dipped a little under Harbaugh. They walked in with a talent probably the lowest it had been since he had been the head coach there, but I don't care how you twist it. They should beat Indiana. They're more talented when it comes to baseline perspective than Indiana. But Indiana's a pretty good team. They have a good quarterback. They play in very good defense. And they're efficient enough on offense, and they don't make mistakes. And right now, I would still say Wisconsin's the second best team, but they've only played 1 game. So I guess if you did a power ranking, you'd probably put Indiana second for how they've played so far. Maryland versus Penn State. Maryland, I didn't think they're going to be good this year. Week 1, they looked terrible, and I'm like, they're not any good. This is not a good team. For 1, Northwestern's 3-0 and not a bad team. For 2, Maryland's looked pretty good the last few weeks, and they're definitely pretty good in offense. And Taulia Talavea has been very good. He's been very good the last 2 weeks. And Raheem Jarrett and some of those offensive playmakers are pretty talented and pretty good guys. So I think Maryland has a decent offense. Mike Loxley's obviously offensive coach. I think they are better. I thought this was a 1-7 team. They're 2-1, and they can play offense. I still don't love their defense. Conversely, Penn State 0-3. That is awful tough. That's just not. Oh, man. I mean, they played Ohio State. It's a tough game. They actually outplayed Indiana, ended up losing it, but then they lose this game to Maryland, and I don't know what to say. 1, Penn State is really struggling running the ball. Losing Journey Brown and losing Noah Cain, the 2 best running backs. I had them have the best running back core group in the Big Ten. They lost those 2 best running backs. No longer do they even have a good running back core. And that is very obvious. Their defense is not playing to the level that I think it should be. I still think that even losing a guy like Michael Parsons to opting out, their defense should be better than it is. I don't think this is a very good team right now. Even when you just look at not having trouble running the ball, really struggling on defense when it comes to especially pass defense, even run defense, it's not very good. I don't think Penn State's very good. Well, they're 0-3, but I could easily see them. They play Nebraska this week, so someone has to win. I don't think Penn State's very good. I could. This is a 4-4 team. I don't think the Big Ten teams for the most. I think the Big Ten. I think you have a very good team in Ohio State and Indiana, Northwestern playing better than probably their talent says they should. And then you have a team like Wisconsin that they've missed 2 games because of COVID. If they can heal up, I think that's the second best team. I hope they can, because I really think that Wisconsin could be 6-0. You know, they finished 7-0. They still could make playoffs. But I still would have a hard time seeing them beat Penn. Sorry. Yeah, I'm so troubling to that. I would have a hard time seeing them beat Ohio State. But if anyone's going to, it's going to be Wisconsin, who I still think is the second best team. I think it's going to be Wisconsin. I still think they play very good defense. They play good at the line of scrimmage. That quarterback looked good that week 1, not against a good Illinois team, but I still would lean Wisconsin for the second best team. Just touch on the last 2 games quickly and then just move on. Minnesota versus Illinois. Minnesota has good offense. We kind of know that. They don't play very good defense. Illinois is terrible. I honestly think that is the worst team in the Big Ten. They really aren't good on defense. They aren't really any good on offense. I think Lovie Smith's on the hot seat. I don't think that's a good team. Minnesota, I think, does have good offense. I really still think they have struggles on defense. They're able to pull off an easy victory. Let's see how they do. I think what is going to be moving forwards is anytime they play a team with a pretty good offense, definitely an efficient offense, they'll be able to, I think, handle Minnesota. And then Rutgers versus Ohio State, Ohio State's best team. Rutgers is a much improved team. Greg Schiano is definitely, I mean, this team was a doormat. They are better. They're better. I think they're better than Illinois. They beat Michigan State. They're a better team, and that's a credit to Greg Schiano. I think they're going to be a better team moving forwards. That is the Big Ten. I'm just going to quickly look at some games this upcoming week. Schedule. The upcoming week, November 13th, 14th. COVID's getting kind of crazy. A lot of cases. Definitely the SEC's been impacted. The Pac-12's been impacted. We will kind of just keep an eye on how things are going to look in the Big 12, in the throughout the country anyways, but obviously it impacted the ACC, impacted Clemson, I think, a lot. So we'll just see how it impacts the Big Ten. They can't really afford to miss a lot of games, and already a team like Wisconsin has missed 2. Purdue's missed 1 because of Wisconsin. Nebraska's missed 1. So let's see how this is moving forwards. Iowa versus Minnesota. Iowa look better. I still don't think they have a great offense. So will they be able to exploit the bad defense for Minnesota? We'll see. I don't think Minnesota has a very good defense, but Iowa was better on offense. But I don't. Yeah, like I just said, I can correcting myself. Minnesota. I don't know. I think that's one of those matchups that kind of a must win for both teams, both 1 and 2. It'll be an interesting matchup. I think it's kind of Iowa's strength is their defense. Minnesota's strength is so strength against strength, weakness against weakness. We'll see. It's kind of a pick 'em kind of game. Illinois versus Rutgers, 2 of the worst teams in the Big Ten. Like I said, I kind of like Rutgers. I think they're a better team. I think they've played a little bit better, and I think they can beat Illinois. Indiana versus Michigan State. Michigan State has really not looked good in 2 games, but they beat Michigan. But Michigan's not quite as good as we thought. I don't think it's still a very efficient team. I don't like their offense. I would definitely lean Indiana in that game. Penn State and Nebraska, neither of these teams playing very well. They're both 0-3. I still would probably take Penn State. Nebraska has shown very little to beat anyone over the last couple of years, several years, 3 years. I mean, 5-7, 4-8, 4-8, and 5-7. Let's just. They're just not very good team. They have continued not to be. Ohio State versus Maryland. Maryland looks better. This offense is pretty good, but Ohio State's on another level. Wisconsin versus Michigan. Wisconsin's been down for 2 weeks. Will they be without Graham Mertz? If they are, that's problematic because I actually think his backup, if he's out because COVID, I think his backup would be. So that means they technically are on their third string quarterback. And if you actually count Jack Cohen being the starting quarterback and Graham Mertz being the backup, they're on their fourth string quarterback. That could be problematic. Michigan's still talented enough to beat them in that circumstances. If Graham Mertz is able to play, I would probably lean Wisconsin because Michigan has just not been very good the last 2 weeks. But we'll see. And then the last game, Northwestern at Purdue. Purdue 2-0, Northwestern 3-0. I think both these teams are a lot better than maybe we anticipated. Northwestern can play some defense. Purdue has a great offensive coach. I think they have been a little bit better defensively than you'd think. That's an interesting matchup. That's a low key game that, remember, Wisconsin, they only can miss one more game and they're not even eligible to play for the West. So is this game for the West? When you think of West contenders, you don't necessarily always think of definitely Purdue, and I wouldn't say you necessarily always think of Northwestern, even though they represented the West 2 years ago. I would lean, I don't know, and home field advantage a little bit more, less so this year, especially since the Big Ten only pretty much allows parents. That's a good game. That's a good game. An extra week off for Purdue, but then when you've only played so few games this year, does it really matter? I'm not necessarily know if you need a week off. Maybe that throws off the rhythm a little bit. I would have to go deeper into the efficiency. Like I said, I looked at Northwestern. They have a top 5 defense nationally through the first 3 games. Let me pull that up while I'm actually here. I had it up a second ago, and I don't know I did it because that's a low key, really interesting game. Big Ten. Big Ten. Okay. Efficiency. Purdue, outside the top 25 in both offense overall and defense. Northwestern, where Northwestern is actually inside. They're at number 18 in total efficiency. Definitely really good defensively. I really like in Northwestern right now. I just think that he was able to get them to play at a higher level, but in particular, get that defense playing really good. And the offensive playing, they're doable. They're not great, but they're doable. I think I'm going to lean Northwestern in that game. So that's the Big Ten. Once again, this week will definitely be a week that I kind of catch back up. You can kind of get me moving in the right direction as far as watching the games, being a little more not having other jobs probably. Who knows? My other job, I sometimes book it randomly out of the blue. So we will see. Now on to the subject that I kind of wanted to probably touch on more, and that is the Pac-12. It was their opening weekend. It was finally November 7th, the last college football conference. They finally got it going. They got it off banging, so much banging that they only played 4 of the scheduled 6 games. 2 of the games got unfortunately canceled. Cal versus UW and Arizona versus Utah. Utah sounded like basically they had a really bad COVID outbreak. I believe they were not going to be able to schedule. They were not be able to field enough scholarship players. So 53 scholarship guys were not going to be able to be fielded for the game. So they had to cancel. Cal is ridiculous. I believe they had 1 guy that got COVID, and because his position group was close enough with him, even though they were positive, they canceled the whole game because of 1 COVID outbreak, and it was in Berkeley. And there's already a lot of rumblings. John Wilmer writes for the Mercury News. He says, you know what? They maybe shouldn't play football this fall because basically one guy gets it. They're going to trace people near him, and it could easily. I mean, it's going to be hard for them with their protocols. It'll be hard for them to play in games. And so, will Cal play this year? I don't know. I'm not going to really talk. I don't even want to talk about that much because if you with something so ridiculous as one guy getting a positive case and you just like cancel a whole game, I don't know. That's another level of Pac-12 left go softness. Sorry for my frankness, but that's pathetic. But Utah did sound like it was definitely more serious, more along the lines of Wisconsin. It sounds like the game was supposed to be Friday. They moved it to this Saturday against, I believe Utah's playing, is it UCLA? Hold on, Pac-12 schedule. I know Cal's supposed to play ASU. Pac-12 schedule, I think it's UCLA. Which is basically a bye anyways. I'm just kidding, kind of. Pac-12 schedule for football this week. It is, and what happened to the schedule? Where are you at? It's UCLA. I'm pretty sure it's UCLA. But it sounds as if they moved it to Saturday instead of Friday, and it sounds as if guys are coming out of quarantine and it's a little better situation. It's actually Saturday night too. It sounds as if this game might be played. I don't think it's for sure. But I think that it might be played. I would not hold your breath on Cal versus ASU. I'm actually just going to come out and say that I think probably somehow Cal figures out a way not to have it because someone has a cold. It's ridiculous. Oh my goodness. Anyways, 4 games were played, including 9 a.m. kickoff Pacific time. ASU versus USC, probably the 2 favorites. I would probably consider the 2 favorites in the Pac-12 South. Once again, I wasn't able to see it pretty much in its entirety because I was working, but I was watching it intermittently. I have seen highlights. I have read the game summaries. I have heard a couple other breakdowns of the game. I looked at the box score. I looked at the stats comparisons. USC won. That's number one. USC is probably with Oregon was considered the favorite. I had them win the South. I picked them, and I think most of the media is USC or Oregon. A lot of actually this recent week there was a lot of articles written about USC's the best chance in the Pac-12 for the playoff. USC is the best roster. USC's this. USC's amazing. Whatever. You kind of usually get that with USC because USC has always had the most talent. USC usually has decent quarterbacks, some explosive receivers, some good weapons, some good things that just kind of disillusion the media members. But USC should have lost. They were down 27-14. They scored, I believe, on like a 4th and 15. And if they didn't score there, I believe they didn't have any more timeouts. I believe ASU basically could have milked the clock and they would have won by 13 points. They ended up throwing a touchdown to, I believe, Brew McCoy, former 5-star wide receiver. They then kick an onside kick. They recover the onside kick. And then they score touchdowns, Keevan Slovis to Drake London. And they then hold ASU, and they win 28-27, coming back from dead to win it in typical USC fashion. ASU has to be kicking themselves. That's just a tough loss. It sounds like they were in good position to win the game, and they didn't do it. They weren't able to win it. Now, I went back and looked at some highlights, what I liked for both teams and what I didn't like. What I liked, ASU ran the ball really well. They actually controlled the line of scrimmage. Then they were very effective running the ball. They had a lot of explosive plays in the run game. They it was very effective. They were very effective running the ball. That's basically what I can say. And they had some of these young backs had some really nice plays. And Jaden Daniels, who's a very good runner, had some nice runs. What I liked about their defense, they're physical. I think for a lot of the game, they forced turnovers. USC had trouble consistently running. They were able to get some explosive plays at times, but they weren't consistently able to run. Some good things by ASU's defense. Now in the pass game, USC's tough to tell from the pass game because they have a good offensive coordinator, Graham Harrell. They have a good quarterback in Keaton Slovis, and they have a bunch of really good receivers. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tyler Vaughn, Drake London, Brew McCoy. They have as good a receiving core as anyone in the country. So outside of maybe Ohio State or Alabama possibly. But they did a lot of good things. What they didn't do well, first of all, I heard a ton of drops by the ASU receiving core. I heard like 6, 7. It was a young receiving core, and I guess it showed. They just had trouble catching the ball from Jaden Daniels. Also, ASU obviously just blew it. I mean, you had the victory and give up a 4th down for a game for a touchdown. Not unable to secure an onside kick. Give up another touchdown. They just didn't get it done. And for a program to take that next step, you have to win a game like that. A game that you're ahead by 13 points with like 3 minutes left. What was good about USC winning? They found a way to win. That's good. I mean, anytime you can find a way to win, especially when you're kind of down and out and you're able to crawl back, shows heart, shows character, shows maybe the culture's a little better than I maybe assumed. What a good receiving core. Obviously, Slovis put up a lot of yards. They were able to run a little bit. They were effective. Obviously, not a bunch of passing yards by Arizona State, and I saw a couple of USC's D-backs on the Pro Football Focus grades for best grades for the week for Pac-12 team, and Chris Steele, former top 54 star, he was on there, and so it sounded like their defensive backfield played decently well. What I didn't like is, once again, they turned the ball over several times, fumbles, interception, and they had a tendency just to make mistakes, and make mistakes you can lose. Also, I heard they missed a lot of tackles, and they got run on. They gave up some explosive plays. That's what's happened to them the last few years. Their defensive line, their front seven, hasn't been very good. Their linebacker core has not tackled well, and it sounded like those kind of woes continued. I remember when I looked at their front seven, I think I gave their defensive line, based upon talent, second best defensive line unit in the Pac-12, and I actually didn't even include their linebacker, despite them having several former top 100 5-star level players like Pagayote and I mean Salvatore Lope, but he's not playing. But they have guys that Hunter Eccles, Caleb Tremblay was a 4-star JUCO guy. They have high-rated guys, but they haven't ever played quite to that talent level, and it sounds like they still aren't. From that game, it sounded like they really struggled, and I didn't think Arizona State had that good offensive line. Coming into the year, I thought that was a real question mark. And I also didn't think that their running backs, they had a bunch of young running backs, so I thought that running game in that line was a major question mark. I actually thought ASU's offensive in general had some questions, and it sounded like they really were able to run. And it could be a credit. ASU could be better at the O-line and at the running back position than I thought, but it also could mean that USC's just not very good still in the front seven. But USC won. Congratulations. Game number 2, Colorado, UCLA. Watched very little of it. What I heard was UCLA turned the ball over 4 times. Can't make that many mistakes and expect to win. It's on the road. Obviously, no fans, so it doesn't really. Yeah, it's once again 3 out of the 4 games from the home team was won. The home team's still in this no fan season between like the Big Ten, Pac-12. Still seeing slight edge to the home team. last week I remember I said it pretty much was even. Well, the Big Ten, I'm not looking at it right now, but I think the Big Ten, once again, the home team had a little bit of an advantage, and the Pac-12 did. Travel and some of those issues probably, is enough, and they pump in noise and they do give a slight edge to the home team. So, and you're not playing on your stadium that you're used to playing on. So I think there's slight, but it's not much enough to matter. But UCLA had too many mistakes. It actually sounded like they were able to get their offense going. And when I looked at statistics, Dorian Thompson-Robinson did some good things. UCLA still struggles on defense. And this is a Colorado team that I don't think has a very good offense. I came in expecting very little. Lost their starting quarterback. Lost a couple of their best receivers, guys like Laviska Shenault. Lost some line. So they were replacing a lot. And they did, granted, dealing with you're doing turnovers in your favor. It's giving you a head start. I actually picked UCLA to win the game. I thought UCLA maybe was a 3-3 team this year. Maybe not. Maybe it's just it's 6 team. I don't know. They just are not, kind of like Scott Frost in Nebraska. They just haven't been very good. And Scott Frost is from the Chip Kelly coaching tree. For some reason, it's not working. And even that offense, just kind of like I said about Nebraska, the offense hasn't really been even close up to the par that you would think a Scott Frost, an offensive head coach, should be. And I would say the exact same for Chip Kelly's team. And Scott Frost said, same quarterback, Adrian Martinez, first 3 years. Chip Kelly's had Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And it just doesn't seem to be getting any better. Don't think UCLA is very good. I don't. So we will see what they are this week if they get to play. And we'll see with Utah. But Colorado, good victory. I have to look at who they play this weekend. They play Stanford. I believe Davis Mills, who I'm going to talk about here in a second for Stanford, might be out again. I actually think Stanford didn't look too bad. So I would probably say that as of right now, I would lean Stanford in that game, but we'll see. We'll leave that up to this upcoming week. But third game I'm going to talk about Oregon last, even though it was the third game played. I'm going to talk about last. The next game I'm going to talk about is Oregon State, Washington State at Oregon State. Not a very talked about game. I think it was kind of the under the radar game, kind of with UCLA and Colorado this weekend. Washington State, who I picked to not win a game. I thought new head coach, bringing in a new head coach, new offense, new quarterback. They had quite a few guys enter the portal. They had some off-season stuff that sorry, my headphones fell off. Off-season stuff that I thought was not necessarily terrific for a team. I was kind of expecting not a very good year for Washington State, and still might not be, but they didn't look bad. I thought Deloria, the freshman quarterback, he's a pretty talented guy, and he made a lot of plays out of the pocket, a lot of what you would call rabbit in your hat, alley ball, like just get outside the pocket, create something, and he made plays. They are mixing Max Borghi, who's their all-conference running back, and despite that, their offense still was pretty good. Their defense did some good things. They have some good guys, like a Jahad Woods is one of the most productive linebackers coming back. Oregon State was unable to consistently really be able to put it offense together. They got yards. Oregon State got yards in Washington State, but they weren't able to really ever threaten them. And Washington State pretty much controlled the whole game. I don't think Oregon State's very good. From what I saw, they lost a little too much offensively. I don't think they're as good offensively. Defensively, they always have holes. I don't think they're great in the D-line. I don't think they have a very good secondary. I don't think Oregon State's very good. So, and Rick Rolovich and coach. I mean, he was a good coach in Hawaii, and he can coach. And I think I underestimated that. So, good victory by Washington State. They play Oregon this week. If they are a lot better than people thought, they will give Oregon a game. I don't think they will, but we will see. Now to the last game and to the game that obviously I have the most vested interest. My Oregon Ducks played at home versus Stanford, 35-14. It was the primetime game on ABC. Did get cut off for a little bit because Joe Biden was doing his quote unquote acceptance speech. I don't want to get political, but that you might know my leanings by my saying supposed. I will see if you see what when everything gets go through. Plain and simple, what I liked, what I didn't like from an Oregon, and I'm going to give my opinion on Stanford. First of all, Stanford was given a bad break. Davis Mills, guy who started half the games last year, former 5-star, a guy who many people were expecting some really good things of this year. He ended up testing positive for COVID and was not could be active for the game. And they found out literally, I think, 2 hours before the game. Connor Wennington, an all-purpose back, I think he was a preseason all Pac-12 guy. He also was out for the game. So you're missing your star quarterback and probably your first or second best wide receiver. That's not a good break to have going into a game against probably the best team. And from what I saw on Saturday, if you're watching throughout all the games, I would still say Oregon is the best team in the Pac-12. Stanford wasn't bad though. It was. So I remember their offensive line last year had a lot of problems, but they had some injuries to a guy like Walker Little. They had a bunch of young freshman guys that they were playing. And I looked at their talent coming into this year, and I put them last second. I did not have them. I actually replaced them over Oregon. I had Oregon. I'm like, Oregon has replacing 5 starters. I'm like, I can't have them have one of the top 3 offensive line units. So I put Stanford in there. And then I started reading a little bit more about their offensive line. And a guy like Drew Dahlman at the center, Roos, the tackle, Walter Serrell, the former 5-star, the other tackle. I'm like, I think Stanford's going to have a pretty good O-line. So that was probably one of the strengths along with the wide receiver and skill position groups on the team. And I was kind of right. Their offensive line is pretty good. They're kind of a little bit more like Stanford of old. They have some pretty good running backs. Austin Jones, who I assumed was pretty good. Saw him play as a freshman. I thought he was pretty good. He's pretty good. Wide receivers, they weren't having Davis Mills throw them. They're having Jack West and Tanner McGee, the backups throw them. But, I can't think of the guy's name. He's I can't think of it offhand, but he's a bigger wide receiver. He can really fly. And Michael Wilson's another one. I didn't see Osiris St. Brown play. But they did some good things offensively. They were able to get 400-plus yards. They only scored 14 points, but they also had 4 missed field goals. And 3 of those field goals, one field goal was a college guy can miss a 48-yard field goal. The other 3 ones were like 40, I think like 27 and 35. 3 kicks that they should have made probably. He missed all of them. Jeff Toner was 0 for 4. So that's a tough break for Stanford. So they're like, oh, it's closer. I still think that when you look at it, when you break down the efficiency on a play-by-play basis, for one, Stanford really couldn't stop Oregon's offense. I think Oregon's offense had 8 possessions. They scored 5 touchdowns. Then they had a turnover in the red zone on another one. They also missed a field goal themselves. That was not a very long field goal. I think it was like 35 yards or something. Oregon's offense almost had 500 yards of total offense. They had almost 300 yards rushing. And were able to do pretty much, either Stanford's defense is not good, which I do think is a possibility, or Oregon's offense is low-key pretty damn good. And the reason why I would lean to say, a couple reasons why I'm going to lean to say Oregon's offense is going to be better than people expected. They're already number 8 nationally in efficiency. One, Joe Moorhead has always been a good offensive coordinator. This is a guy that got the Mississippi State job because of his amazing job they did at Penn State. Number 2, Oregon has talent on offense. I know my team. Clearly, I follow recruiting. I know that they have a lot of guys that are pretty high-rated recruits. on the offensive line, at the quarterback position, at the wide receiver position, at the running back position. Number 3, they were just efficient. It wasn't even – they were just pretty good at making plays. They had wide receivers that, like a Pittman, one hand, 44-yard catch down the sidelines. Johnny Johnson III, who's been a 3-year starter, probably one of the best trained wide receivers, he came back and made a catch 38 yards on the goal line. Another play that he actually was called, said that he was actually ruled that he didn't quite have an imbalance and it was super close. He was actually getting interfered. They threw a flag for pass interference. He's falling down and catches the ball with one hand. They didn't get him the catch, but it still was an amazing play. Jalen Redd, in double coverage, grabbed the ball. Actually, the defender's knocking the ball. He reaches over as the guy's knocking the ball down and grabs it. It was like probably a 25-yard out route. And then DJ Johnson, who was a former top 100 defensive end, now is on the offensive side of the ball, playing tight end, had 5 catches, including a touchdown, and he also had a 1 catch. He caught it and ran down the field about 30 yards. And he's like 6'5", 260, just a crazy athlete. And C.J. Verdell had a really nice catch out of the backfield, threw the ball right over the shoulder of the linebacker. It was just the efficiency, the guys making plays, wide receivers making plays, just really nice setups. And in the run game, especially when Show started keeping the RPO, he had a touchdown run. He ran, I think, like 15 times for 85 yards. He had several. He had a 20-yard run, and he had another 15-yard run. He had a 10-yard touchdown run. And then C.J. Verdell had 100-plus yards. Travis Dye had about 75 yards. Cyrus Abibigiko also had a touchdown. They just were very efficient. I mean, the offensive line was good, no sacks. I think they all graded out by Pro Football Focus at plus 80, which is 80% positive plays. Ryan Walk was the offensive lineman of the week in the Pac-12. He also was the highest graded offensive guard by Pro Football Focus in college football last week. And then they had a couple just highlight pancakes by Salam Omube, who's a right tackle, right guard. Stephen Jones pancaked some guys. He was the left tackle. George Moore did. I mean, across the board, I just thought the offense was very efficient. I thought they made necessary plays on a consistent basis. I kind of knew every time they got the ball, I'm like, they're just getting a lot of positive plays, very few negative plays. But if I had to correct one thing, Tyler Show threw an interception, and he also threw 2 other passes that could have got picked off. One should have. The guy dropped it. And another one that actually, I can't remember if it was dropped, but it was almost picked. He needs to be a little more careful with the ball. He can't turn the ball over. You're going to lose games. But that's about it. The first quarter maybe struggled a little bit running. But the offense for Oregon was just was amazingly efficient. Defensively, I really expected Oregon to be just one of the best defenses, despite the 3 opt-outs. One, they were playing in a stadium that didn't have a lot of juice because of no fans. They looked flat to begin the game out. They came out and Stanford drove the field, missed a field goal, but they drove the field. Second possession, Stanford drove the field and scored a touchdown. The first couple series of the game, Oregon's defense looked flat. Now they did get better, but they still no sacks, didn't force any turnovers, still gave up some big time plays. They gave up a 70-yard run. They gave up a couple 30-plus yard pass plays. I wouldn't say that this was a phenomenal performance by the defense. I want to say first game, little flat, just maybe get into the rhythm of things. I did see a few things that worry me. The opt-outs of the nickelback, Javon Holland, and safety, Rose Bowl MVP, Brady Breeze. I just noticed that I did not like the middle. And also Troy Dye going away to the NFL. It's 4-year starter, all Pac-12 linebacker. Those 3 guys I probably missed the most because The inside linebacker play wasn't great. The safety play wasn't great. That is where I notice it the most. And the defensive line, probably for as good as they are, I think this is the best unit in the Pac-12. I didn't think they got great penetration in the run game, and I didn't think they got great pressure in the pass game. Now, it's kind of tough to pass against Stanford because they run so much. You can't really pin your ears back because there's, especially with the backup quarterback. And they were really playing it safe, playing not really pressing the ball a lot, not passing. I don't know what the comparison of run to pass was, but it seemed as if they definitely were relying upon their offensive line, their running backs in the run game more so, especially because Davis Mills was out. And I think that kind of impacted not able to really guys be able to, because when you get your best pass rushes, it's when you're usually blitzing's one, and the other one is you have guys pinning their ears back. They're like, I'm getting off the ball and I'm going to get after the quarterback. Well, when you don't want to do that necessarily when the other team is running, because you're getting up the field, you're getting out of your gap, you're leaving run lanes, and especially when you have younger, newer inside linebackers and safeties that they need all the help they could from the defensive line to help tighten the gaps. And that was a problem because there was some times that when they did get movement on that defensive line and linebackers and the safeties were out of position, that's where you saw 20-yard, 30-yard, 70-yard runs by Stanford. They're 40th in efficiency defensively in the nation after week one. I think they'll be better. I trust that they're going to get some of these things ironed out. I think that the defense that they have is a little. I think against Washington State that. Well, I would say this, and the safeties have to play better against pass, and even the linebackers against the pass getting back. Once again, I've said this before, I think I would probably take the two starting cornerbacks for Oregon over any cornerback group in the Pac-12. And Diamond Lenore was first team all Pac-12 this week by the PFF, who's the highest graded corner. And Mikael Wright was second team, and I think he was the third highest graded corner in the Pac-12. And Wright got beat maybe twice. A really good place by the wide receiver. I wouldn't necessarily say he was burnt. One was just a great catch. Another was just a great route. But he also made a lot of really good plays. And then Lenore, he had 4 or 5 plays where the guys weren't open at all. I think Oregon's corners, you can, as long as Wright and Lenore stay healthy, you can have faith that they're going to be good at the cornerback position. The question is safety. And they're also missing Verone McKinley, the starting free safety, which is the field safety. He's out next game for the first half because of a targeting call in the second half. I worry a little bit in this game because of the passing game about the safety position. We need them to play better. But I also have faith that this game that they will be able to get off the ball more. I think even though they will run, the run and shoot, you always kind of under the idea that they're always the likelihood of the pass. And so I think you'll have got more guys getting off the ball. I think you'll see more blitzing. I think they'll try to get after this kid. I know he's a playmaker. I know he's a guy who likes to scramble. He's kind of a dual threat guy. I still think getting him off platform is always beneficial. I really think it is. Keep your outside contained. Keep him inside the pocket. Another one is just keep him inside the pocket. Maybe just bring 3 rushers. Maybe you do just drop 7, 8 guys into coverage. Maybe you do play more nickel with dropping a couple linebackers back and make him read. Make him have to beat you with consistently just making the read on the plays instead of being that playmaker. I think you play with it. Is pressure better? Is maybe playing more guys into coverage and just try to keep him contained inside the pocket and making him try to beat you with his reads down the field. I think you just kind of play it kind of, what do you do? What's the best idea? And you kind of go from there. Offensively, I expect Oregon to do a lot of things that they did this week. It's a different defense, obviously. I think Washington State will move more. I think there'll be more slants on the defensive line, especially because it's a young offensive line. And they gave Oregon's offensive line fits the last couple of years with Bleach. Herbert had two of his worst games against Washington State. He played terrible at Pullman 2 years ago, and he did not play great for a lot of the game last year. Now, the thing is, Show seems to be, from at least his first game, what I see from Show, I don't necessarily say he's a better runner than Herbert, because Herbert could actually really run. He's a 4.6 guy at 6'6", 240. And he obviously had 3 touchdowns against Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl. But Herbert was not a very willing runner. And even in the NFL, when you see Herbert prefers to pass. It sounds redundant. He's a quarterback, of course. But Herbert will stay in there as long as possible to make a pass. And he might get outside the pocket, but he likes to pass. From Show, I think he had 14 runs. Some were designed, some were his read on the RPO, some were just getting no one was open or there started to be pressure and he just took off. But I definitely noticed a more willingness to run from Show, and he's pretty quick. I wouldn't say super fast, but he's quick. I mean, he can get outside pretty quickly for 5, 10, 15-yard gains. And from what I saw of him in the spring game a couple years ago, what I saw of him when he played in garbage time, what I saw of him when he played a couple times that Herbert got hurt, he is a pretty willing runner. I think he, more so than Herbert, he will run. So, for instance, they're slanting, they're getting pressure on him. Show will run. Show will get out and he will run, and he's a pretty good runner. And I think he can effectively run. So maybe that makes them slow that down a little bit, because the thing with Herbert is even though he could run, he wasn't a very willing runner and many times didn't take off. And so you kind of like slant. You didn't have to really fear a lot of running by him because he just didn't run that much. Show, on the other hand, I think after week 1, you could tell he's going to probably take off if he gets pressured. And so maybe that does slow down too much, like, because if you don't really want to get, when you're doing a bunch of slanting, when you're doing a bunch of games on the defensive line. I played defensive line in college. If a guy is a running quarterback, you do run the risk of losing contain on the outside, of losing gap integrity, and the guy taking off. And it's problematic if a guy's a dual threat guy. Dual threat guy, you want to kind of close in the pocket. You want to tighten the pocket, but you don't want to be doing a bunch of movement around to get you out of position, because a dual threat guy will take advantage of that. And I think Show is more of an actual dual threat guy than Herbert. I just think he's more likely to run from what I've seen of him so far in his career. And so maybe they'll slow the games down on the defensive line, which I think is good. I think that moving around a lot is problematic for a young offensive line. So I think the fact that Show is dual threat, I think it's going to help his line out. I think it's going to make it a little easier. That's just my prediction. I think you still have to run. I think you're a bigger, more physical team, and I think you get downhill and try to mash Washington State. I think you saw last week with Oregon, they have a heck of a run game. I mean, it's a young offensive line, it's a new offensive line, but these guys are still very talented, very powerful. And like I said, there were some highlight blocks, and most of those were in the run game. There was guys just straight up one-arming guys, pancaking guys, driving guys down the field, throwing guys in the ground. And I think this is a pretty strong, powerful offensive line. I think Stephen Jones, Masala Amamuve, Ryan Walk, Alex Forsythe, I think these guys are physical guys. And I think when it comes to the run game, I still think Oregon's is under Merritt Cristobal going to be a run-centric team. And with C.J. Verdell and Travis Dye, you have two of the best running backs in the Pac-12 to go along with a physical line. I think you just sit there and you're going to make teams stop you. And from what I saw in game 1, against not a bad front seven. Like I thought Stanford, because of the opt-outs and because of the overall recruiting, I did not expect them to have a very good secondary. And they didn't look great. I mean, granted, Oregon's wide receivers made some good plays, but I actually thought there's some good players in the front seven for Stanford, especially guys like Thomas Booker and stuff. I thought that the front seven, maybe the young offensive line, the front seven, they might have trouble running. They didn't at all. They almost ran for 300 yards. So if they can do that on Stanford, I think they're going to be able to run on Washington State. I think they'll be able to run easily on USC. I think they'll very easily be able to run on Oregon State. Even Cal. Washington's probably the only team that I think is as good a front seven as Stanford from a talent perspective. So I think Oregon can really, just, hey, Joe Moorhead, you make them stop the run. If they do, you move the quarterback, you do the play action. And I think the receivers are good enough that consistently they'll be able to beat a lot of the defensive backs. Cal and Washington will be a challenge because those are some pretty good defensive backfields. But I went in 6-0, but there's always that little apprehension. Is Oregon not as good as I thought? Because they did lose a decent amount. They lost a lot of starters on the OL. They did lose Justin Herbert. They lost, obviously, 4 guys to opt out, including the best tackle in college football. I'm like, is there going to be a drop-off? And the media definitely thought there was. There's definitely was more apprehension in picking Oregon. But I think after week 1, you would have to feel pretty good because the media is like, Oregon has good defense. And the media is like, but that offense I just worry about. Honestly, the offense is better than defense week 1. Oh, that's just week 1. We'll see how this week is. But what I saw and sometimes if guys are you're just hot and the other team's just playing terrible, you're just like, you kind of have this, you get a little disillusioned and you're like, oh, they have a great offense when the other team's just terrible. And you had a bunch of guys make a bunch of freak plays that normally they wouldn't make. And there was some receivers that made some really nice catches. But what I liked was it was just efficiently running the ball, efficiently making good decisions, either scrambling or making the right reads in the pass game. And that efficiency I see as something that you can rely on more moving forwards. And they have a good offensive coordinator who knows how to call a good game. And you have talented enough guys at those skill positions and experience too at those skill positions that I believe that Oregon is going to have a pretty good offense this year. And I think that offense, you're going to have to score. So they're forcing every team to have to score. And I still think, even though I was not unbelievably impressed with Oregon on defense this week, I still think that Oregon can play some defense. And I still think there's guys like Kayvon Thibodeau and Mace Funa, and I didn't even talk about Noah Sewell, who was the best defensive player for Oregon, the former 5-star, who's a true freshman, and the brother of Penei Sewell made a couple of terrific plays. And so Sewell and Diomado Lenore and Mikael Wright, the 2 best corners, there's still just some very good guys. You could possibly have 4 or 5 all-conference level guys on that defense. I trust that Oregon's going to be able to consistently have a very good week. And I said there's going to be some offensive linemen that are not on that preseason All Pac-12 team that I think eventually end up there. And I mentioned like Ryan Walk, Masala Amuve, Stephen Jones. They could have 2-3 on the two deep all-conference team on that offensive line. Like the Pro Football Focus voted Oregon's offensive line of the week. And it might be young, but there's some very talented players that would have played for any other team in the Pac-12 the last couple of years. They just were behind Penei Sewell and Calvin Throckmorton and Shane Lemieux, those experienced guys. But even when you saw them yesterday, this guy's pretty good, and he's recruited pretty good. So Oregon's offensive line is going to be pretty darn good moving forwards. And so, long story short, I think they are going to be pretty good. Quickly, have about 10 minutes left in this podcast. I'm going to go through this week's games, who I think is going to win in the Pac-12. Colorado versus Stanford. I kind of said it. I like Stanford, even without Davis Mills, who probably won't be playing this week. I just think overall, I think they have a good offensive line. I think they're going to be able to run the ball in Colorado. I think they're going to be able to do enough on defense. I still don't think Colorado's offense. I know they played good and they got obviously the breaks of all the turnovers UCLA, but I still question Colorado's offense. USC versus Arizona. I just don't think Arizona's any good this year. I think this is a bad team. So I'm going to pick USC in that game. Colorado. I'm going to pick Oregon last. Cal versus ASU. I question a lot if this game's going to happen. But if it does happen, first game of the season versus Cal, ASU had a really, really tough loss. I think I was picking, when I did the preseason, I believe I was picking Cal to win this game. But no, I don't now. I think ASU had one game under their belt. I think they're able to outplay Cal. I picked ASU in this game. UCLA, Utah, UCLA. This one sounds a little better. And I trust Utah because of the state they're in to maybe be able to make it happen. I'm going to pick Utah. I don't think UCLA is any damn good again, but the game might not happen. But if it does happen, I'm going to pick Utah. Oregon State versus Washington. I'm sorry, Oregon State was just really disappointing. I just don't think they're any good. Washington, they're going to have a good defense. I don't know what to think of Washington's offense, but they get to play against a bad Oregon State defense, so maybe they'll look really good. I'm going to pick Washington to win this game. And then the last game, and not the least game, Oregon versus Washington State at Washington State. I am going to pick Washington State. No, I'm just kidding. I really do think it's going to be Oregon. I am interested. I really am just curious because Washington State looked a lot better than I thought. And that quarterback is pretty electric. He can do some really good things outside the pocket. I wonder how they're going to play him. Are they going to put a lot of pressure on him, try to force him into mistakes, or are they going to just keep him in the pocket and make him beat him that way, make him make mistakes that way? I mean, I was kind of thinking real time, and at first I was like, get pressure on him. Then the more I thought about it, I'm like, no, maybe you just drop guys in the coverage and make him beat you. Make him make the right read because he's a young quarterback, and that might be more difficult than anything. Just make sure to keep your integrity. Don't let him get outside, and try to win some one-on-one battles with the D-line and maybe send in a linebacker here and there on a blitz. So, and then offensively, they're going to play games. I like Jihad Woods. I think he's an excellent linebacker. I don't think it's a great defensive backfield. And Oregon State was able to get a lot of yards in through the air, and I think that secondary is not very good. So I think Oregon wants to run. They want to run, but if they're playing games, they're getting some negative plays. You could see, that's when that pass game could get to working, and they're going to respect. I think Tyler Show's running because he will run, he will take off, and if they start. And then they start dropping more guys in the coverage, then you can go back to the run game. You can utilize the fact that you had the advantages with numbers in the run game. So I think they can play some games, and I think they have the personnel. I think they have the personnel up front to win. I think they have the personnel outside to win. I think you have these good, experienced running backs in C.J. Verdell, Travis Dye, Cyrus Abibi-Likio. If I was going to pick a score right now, I am going to go 35-21. I think Washington State will be able to get some offense going a little bit, but I think it's going to be one of those games that's going to be in that 14-0, maybe 14-7, 21-7. It's a couple touchdowns. But Washington State is able to hang in there and continue to just do enough. And I think they maybe force a turnover or two. And I think it's going to be a 14-point game. That's my prediction. I had it. I think I forgot what I had but in my head last week, I was thinking for most of the time it was to be 28-13, Oregon over Stanford. And it ended up 35-14. If you had told me Davis Mills was going to play, I might have thought they weren't even going to score that much. If you had told me Davis Mills was going to play, I wouldn't have thought they had as many yards offensively as they got. So that was one thing that would have surprised me. But I also would have thought that the offense was going to struggle more. I wasn't predicting Oregon's offense to look so efficient. Basically, 8 possessions, scored on 5, and got to the red zone the other 2. missed field goal and a turnover. So I would not predict that. So this week, I think maybe the offense makes a couple, has a little more, couple of hiccups, maybe a little bit slanting. The movement on the line of scrimmage is able to cause some negative plays, maybe even force turnover. But I think the defense actually does play a little better. I think this offense, I think Washington State be able to score maybe one early, maybe one late. But I think for a lot of the game, he makes a couple of mistakes, maybe force some turnovers, and it could be one of those games. I would not shock me if Oregon forces some turnovers and it ends up being 42-49-17. I think Oregon's definitely is significantly the more talented team. So anyways, that's it for tonight. Come back next week. I'm going to have West Coast College football. Let's get the guys' gentleman's name right. He was on here with Ken Doble from West Coast College football. He was on the Sportscast with Santiago, who is the CEO of the Sportscast. He met with him, so he's going to be on with me, and we're probably going to be talking this past week's Pac-12 games and probably the week moving forward. So thanks for tuning in once again. Check us out, sportscast.net. Hit like and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Periscope. Hit us up on Twitter, Sportcast1. This is the Tyler Turner Show. Until next week, have a great night, folks.